Hello everyone, welcome to part 8 of this series. In this episode we're going to continue with our menu setup. We will integrate the Quest module in our menu and quickly dip into the Systems tab as well. Before we start, I would like to thank all of my Patreon supporters for the amazing support. I will make this scene available as it gets updated on Patreon. So we're back to some of the basics, going to continue finishing off our menu. Now, no, this will not be entirely finished. There will definitely be some details, fine-tuning to be done as well, but those are more for later on videos. So we'll set up the general structure, we'll make it all functional, and that's the most important part. Obviously, there is some graphics tweaking to be done, but I'm personally hoping you're not really going to go with the simple graphics I went for, but you know, that's completely up to you anyway. So when we go to user interfaces, we're going to turn off the HUD for now. We don't need to see that. I'm going to open up our menu, switch to TD mode, and scroll out. There we go. Now in the menu we set it up so that we have a design tab, and we have a inventory tab, and we have a health bar. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag out something from that inventory tab, currency. I'm going to drag it below health bar. And when we turn off inventory tab, we'll still have currency. Reason for that is simply because Breath of the Wild has that in every tab, so it's not inventory specific. So first little small fix. Now next up, we're going to duplicate that inventory tab twice. There we go. We are going to rename them. So I'm pretty sure the first one was Adventure. And we have System. Systems. Pretty sure it was Systems. Or just System. Let me double check here. Yeah, just System. There we go. So what we're going to do is, this is entirely optional, but if you want this to work on a console type platform, or just console really, we're going to enable switching tabs with buttons. Obviously you can simply have a on click as well, but I'm going to go with a button layout here. So we'll be using Q and E and act as if those are our buttons. But if you're going to develop for console, nice thing here is you select the platform, so in this case the Switch, and you can easily map it. On click is something really basic, it's just a button, that's really it. But the nice thing here is to actually develop it in such a way that it would work on console as well. So let's enter our first one. So this will just be a simple on key down, and it will be the Q. Now the reason I'm doing Q is because Q and E are next to W and they're easy to reach and make kind of sense as a R1, L1 type of option. That's just a personal preference, you can change it to whatever. Next up is going to be the E, of course, because we need to have both. And I'm going to set up the control for this straight away, even though we didn't really do much with those tabs, but we have them duplicated, they have names, they will function. There we go. Now next up we are going to set up some really weird conditions. I've played around with this a bit because it's a bit strange, but so if systems is active, which is going to be completely on the left, then we are going to do something. So that's the completely and utterly left tab, or right tab, sorry. So if system is active, then we're going to activate, when pressing Q, we're going to activate inventory. and we are going to disable system because system is active, so then we don't need to see it anymore. And we have to make sure obviously that adventure tab is deactivated as well. If system is not active, then we are going to activate our adventure tab or log, however you want to call it. And we are going to deactivate the other two. That's always going to be the case though. If you're activating one, then the rest of the actions will always be deactivating the others. And then this one will actually be based on the adventure log, because that's the other alternate, so that's actually on the left. So if the adventure tab is active, then we are going to activate our inventory tab when pressing E, so I'm going to the right, and yeah, deactivate the others. Obviously adventure needs to be deactivated, but system as well. And on the else scenario, we are going to activate system and deactivate the others. And there we go. Now, in order to know if this actually works, we actually need to do something with these tabs. So our inventory tab is fine. Then next up would be our adventure tab. Now our adventure tab needs to be a bit different, so let's start off with actually renaming our text, adventure log. So that's our header. It's actually a bit much. Let's resize this a tiny bit. Obviously you need to make sure we do the same with the other ones. There we go. So yeah, adventure is going to be this, so that's fine, I guess. Let's already remove the entire inventory content. We're not going to use that. Now this one is going to be on the left, so we won't need our L1 because there's nothing to the left anymore in our adventure tab. And when we press R1 from here, we'll actually go to our inventory. There we go. Now the dots are wrong as well. So this is 16 and this is a really weird number. So let's turn those around. This needs to be big. This needs to be 16. And this needs to be that weird transparency. What are we? 52. Cool. So there we go. And this needs to be completely and utterly white. Cool. Some nice spelling going on there. Let's correct that. Perfect. So next up, I'm going to leave the rest empty for now. We're going to add the rest later, obviously. Just want to make sure this all works. And then we have our systems tab. Let's also continue by removing that entire inventory content. We don't need that. Let's rename this to system. In this case, we don't need the R1, we just need the L1. And the L1 is going to be inventory as well. There we go. And yeah, the same little trick with those dots. So it's a weird size. I'm not sure why I went with that, but that's okay. 52. And all white. So yeah, a couple of small changes, but I know there's nothing in there yet, but at least all the tabs now do something else. So let's deactivate all of them. Let's enable our inventory, turn off our menu, and hit play. Cool. So our inventory is active. Now if I press E, we are going to system. If I press Q, we're going to tab. If I inventory, if I press Q again, we're going to adventure log. And the same with the E's, and yeah, we're infinitely switching. Looks good. Now obviously you can do some smooth animation work with all of this, but functionally this all works fine. So we're good there. Now let's actually make sure there's something in there. Now the nice thing is I added those triggers on the actual menu, and the game pauses obviously. So nothing will happen with our menu unless our menu is actually activated, and the menu is only activated if we press escape. So can't change any of these things because the trigger won't be activated. So pretty nice. Now let's actually start off with our system tab, and yeah, this is not going to be the most exciting thing. We're just going to add some buttons here. UI and button, there we go. And I have a weird size for this, and don't need to follow along with that obviously. But reason for this strange size is because I was already experimenting with the next step in terms of nice highlighting animations, but quite honestly wasn't able to complete that just yet, but it's something I'll definitely add later. But yeah, for now it's not going to be entirely functional in that sense. I'm going to add an action, so if we're pressing, we're gonna save our game because this is our save button. Save. Let's make that text a bit bigger. Cool. So yeah, pretty straightforward. Now we have all of these options. So normal color, highlighted color, press color, selected color. So normal color, I'm going to do the same as that, that preview basically. Maybe I shouldn't be changing this at all actually. Now the transparency actually looks better. It's not what I wanted to do, but it actually works better. So we have normal color, then we have highlighted color. We're going to go with, I don't know. And I know in Breath of the Wild there's some, sleek animations going on. I actually created quite a lot of it already, but haven't completely figured out how to make it as good as possible. So for now, we're just going to highlight colors, and once we get in a later stage of fine-tuning and animating certain things, we'll do that as well. It's going to be an overall, fine-tuning video basically for, I don't know. There we go. And selected, I'm just going to do this. There we go. Not a big fan of completely changing all of that. There we go. Disabled doesn't really matter that much because it won't be disabled. It's going to work. So cool, all of that is set up. Then we're going to duplicate that button, and this is going to be our load button. About here is fine. Yeah, cool. So the load button needs to have the load text, and when it comes to our action, we need to change the action to load game. We're going to set up an expanded save load system later on once we do the main menu, etc. as well, but at least for now you'll have some functionality so you can actually save and load, which is pretty cool. But it's not an elaborate save system, but that deserves its own video in all honesty, because that'll take some time. So next up we're going to have options. There we go. I have no idea why I turned off gizmos for this, that's pretty stupid. So we have options, and for now I'm not really going to set anything in our options one yet. Again, that's quite honestly a video of its own, because there's so much you can do with that. And the last one is ability controls. Which is a terribly wrong name. Ability controls, there we go. Spacing looks about the same. Yeah, I'm fine. Now, let me remove those actions, by the way. There we go. So only load and save will actually have some actions. Perfect. Cool. So we have the basics set up. So yeah, it's not terribly interesting. Now in Breath of the Wild there is a image of the controller right here showing the controls. It's just an image, so you know, it's nothing exciting, but basically it's an image showing the controls. I think that's pretty cool to have that displayed right there. It's actually really handy. Often you have to go to, you know, several sub menus to actually find the controls, so I really do appreciate that. But in order to have something like that, we would actually need to have all of the controls set up. So I didn't really see the point in already doing something like that right now, because we are not close to finish with our game mechanics, so most of it would just be blank. So that's definitely something for the final stages of this series. So we're done with systems, that's fine for now, and let's head over to our Adventure tab. Now this is going to be a more interesting one, obviously, as we're going to use the quest module here. So I'm just going to look for, I think it was journal, quest journal, there we go. Let's drag that in here, drag it in inventory tab, and yeah, we have our quest journal. Just going to unpack this. Now, for some reason, some of these just have really weird scaling. I'm not really sure why that's the case. So I'm just going to scale that back. And we have our panel, which is nice. One important thing here, let me remove that animator as well. There we go. One interesting little detail here is that, did I do that correctly? Yeah, I did. Yeah, as I said, one interesting detail here with the parent here of the quest journal is that it's what decides what is displayed in our tab. So let's make sure that's correct. There we go. So yeah, like I said, this actually decides what is displayed. So as you can see right now, it will filter based on active, completed, failed, abandoned, or everything. So right now we're only seeing active, and we can have only tracked quests in there. So that's a pretty cool little detail when it comes to that, because you can, well, as you can see, you can change all of this. So that's pretty nice. Quest UI, what is it using? It's using Quest Detail. We'll need to set that up as well. It's hidden by default, but that's actually something we'll need to set up. So yeah, we're pretty good here. So I'm not sure why this doesn't auto fix. That's pretty annoying, but fine. So we have this set up now. Now what we actually really need to do here is just change a couple of things. It's not that much really interesting going on here. So once we open this up, we're going to remove the backgrounds. We don't care about the background. And when it comes to the panel, I played around with it a bit so you can follow along or not. Let's actually see if this works. Yeah, that seems about right. Yeah, that's a decent fit. So, as you might guess, here is a lot of stuff we don't really need. So we don't need yet another background. Doesn't fit the style. It's actually a really minimalistic style Nintendo went for with their game. Just going to use a square here. Assets, there we go. Can't find it, that's interesting. Oh, I selected the wrong one. Where are you? There we go. Square. And let's make it black. And let's actually change this color to 60 as well. I think that's what I did with the button, 60. Maybe it's a bit dark. 30, yeah, it seems slightly better. It was a bit dark otherwise. And no, not the image itself. Let's make sure we actually do that properly. Yeah, the inspector. Let's make this a tiny bit smaller, as in Breath of the Wild it doesn't take up the entire thing there, but it definitely does take up more on this side. So it's a bit bigger, so that's nice. Gives us a bit of a bigger viewport in that sense, so it's pretty cool. Now, Arial is definitely not a great font. Once we get to fine-tuning things like our menus, let's also find a proper font for this. It's one of the default fonts, and I mean it works, I guess, but it's definitely not terribly exciting. And yeah, basically there's a lot of hiding going on, just hiding all of those images. You could also go ahead and delete and then just drag it all in yourself. Honestly, the prefabs are so well structured and they just work. I'm not really a big fan of unnecessary work, so that's why I'm not doing it. But if that's your thing, definitely go ahead and manually do it, I guess. But yeah, I'm not a big fan of manual work if I don't have to do it. So there we have it. Now, a couple of interesting things if you're not really that aware of how Unity's UI works. You have a couple of options that you can change yourself if you want to. So we have the scroll bar, for example. By default, this is hiding if there's not enough items in there. I think that's pretty cool. That's pretty useful actually. And when it comes to this one, visibility is permanent. Now, I'm going to do auto hide as well for this one, because yeah, auto hide is actually a pretty useful feature. Why would you want to see scroll bars if they're not needed? So pretty cool. Now when it comes to this image, the handle, pretty sure we had none in the other one. So I'm going to do that for these as well, just to fit the style. Handle, and that way it all matches together. It's not a pretty scroll bar, but it's actually, I personally think it actually looks better than some, you know, rounded image, but that's personal taste. You can do whatever you want with this, obviously. But yeah, auto hide, really useful feature. Don't need to see a scroll bar if we don't need it, so that's pretty nice. So we have a couple of the basics done here. Now let's actually find that quest detail and turn that on. And there we go. So quest detail. I'm completely removing the image wrap, but you don't have to. You can keep it if you think that's cool, having that in there. I don't want it in there, so I'm gonna press delete. Then we have a prince in distress. That's, you don't have to change the text, by the way, just to be absolutely clear. That will automatically be replaced when you actually create your quests. That's not the purpose of this video, but I just wanted to make sure that was, you're aware of that, so don't go through the trouble of actually, you know, changing all of this text to something else. It's literally is going to be replaced. It just shows you what it will look like, which I think is actually pretty useful. So yeah, just like with a lot, we are going to remove that. Let's remove that shadow as well. I think a shadow for text is actually can be pretty nice. I use it in Photoshop and the likes quite often actually, but I really do not like the way it's done in the Unity UI. It just looks weird. I know that's not really a proper opinion, but yeah, it just looks weird. So I'm going to add a small line here. I'm doing that under the text. It's just going to be thin. There we go. Let's make it 50. And that just matches Breath of the Wild a bit in style. So maybe it's still a bit too thick actually. Let's make that a tiny bit smaller. There we go. So yeah, really small line, but yeah, looks decent. I'm just going to select all of these texts. There we go. No, not this one. So I'm selecting them all, setting them all to Arial. Normal. I'm going to resize all of them a bit, just a bit bigger. There we go. Needs to be clear, needs to be readable. So yeah, that's it for that. So nothing all that interesting. Now there's a couple of little details. As you can see, something needs to, you know, be here as well, and we can't see that. And you can look all you want, it's not going to be in here, and that's actually going to be in different prefabs. There we go, let's save. So these prefabs, so that's why I kept this open, will actually hold everything you'll be able to see in here. So if we open one up, there we go. We'll have little status icons, which is pretty nice. So that's basically for basically for if something is activated. So quest status, so inactive, active, complete, abandoned, and blah blah blah. So we have a couple of options here, and you can definitely mess around with that. I'm pretty comfortable with the way Game Creator handles it itself. If you are not and are looking for more options, have a look at this, have a look at what this actually does. This is for tracking. It's pretty cool. We have our text here, and I'm just simply going to quickly change this to Arial. There we go. And yeah, that's all I'm going to do with this one. So let's save that and let's go back, and then we have our list entries. Now this is what is going to be visible in our menu as well. So a list entry will have this little tracking thing, which I think is actually pretty cool. It looks pretty sweet. We have the box basically. As you are aware, I'm not a big fan of that. So I'm going to switch this to 60 and it's going to be black. And we have our different states. We have our text again. So yeah, text, as you might have guessed, need to change it. Going to remove the shadow as well. Remove component. And we have our tracking, which is this image. I think it's pretty cool. I actually really like it. You can change the the color to something else if you want, but yeah, I think it's pretty cool. I like it anyway. So that's for the entries that we see in the menu. And yeah, there we have it. So let's actually give this a try and see what happens. And just to be clear, not a lot is going to happen at all, because obviously we do not have any quests set up yet. And let's turn our HUD back on. There we go. Press escape. We have our inventory queue, we have our adventure log with quests. Nothing to display yet because we don't actually have any quests, but this is going to be really nice once we start setting that up, because everything will already be set up for us. We have our inventory. There's nothing in here yet. And we have our save load options. Now options is not going to do anything. Ability control is not going to do anything. Save is going to save. So that's nice. And now I'm going to run around and we're going to load. And not really sure what happened to my camera here. That's actually pretty interesting. I would actually like to see what's going on here. No, it doesn't really seem like it's this camera either, but... there we go. That explains a lot. So, I'm actually really happy I tested this, because otherwise I would have completely and utterly forgotten about this. So, when it comes to our menu, it's not going to be that simple when to save and load. We need to add some actions here before we do that. So in our systems tab, let's open it up. Let's turn this off for the moment. In our systems tab, we will need to add another action to save and load, and that will be set timescale. There we go. and that needs to be set back to 1. So as you might remember, we pause time when we open a menu, and if you're going to load a game, then you still need to reset time. So yeah, little detail there. Good that I tested this out. No, that's the wrong tab. There we go. So let's try this again. So going to go to System, going to Save, going to walk around, jump, and press load, and we're all good. So yeah, pretty good that we tested that out. So at least we have all of the basic functionality set up. I know there isn't that much you can do with this yet, but once we start setting up our quests, you will see that we won't have to do much on the UI front anymore. There will be some little tweaks, don't get me wrong, but most of the UI stuff will be done. Now you can play around with it and, you know, make it a lot more interesting if you want to, but we set up the foundation here for those things. I think it will be pretty cool in a separate video really near the end of all of this to, for example, look at some disability controls, for example, so have the option to change colors, things like that. Those little details that might be pretty interesting to do as well. And obviously we'll need to look at a big map solution as well, but that's not really in the default menu in Breath of the Wild. That's a separate button and a separate menu, so we'll have a look at that as well. But for now, we have everything we need to set up in order to actually have some quests in our game and actually start bringing in some actual structure into our game world. So hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please hit like and subscribe, and I will see you next time.